The rain had stopped an hour ago, but Cyrilith Varen could still feel it soaking through what remained of her dress. The forest floor was cold beneath her broken body, sharp with pine needles and the copper scent of her own blood. Her right leg was twisted at an angle that promised agony if she tried to move. 3 ribs were cracked. She could feel them grinding with every shallow breath. The thornwood was silent. No birds. No wind. Just the slow drip of water from black branches and the fading beat of her own heart. She remembered Drystan's face in those final moments. Not angry, not cruel, just bored. Like he was discarding something that had outlived its usefulness. "You were never meant to see those records, Cyrilith." His voice had been calm, almost gentle, as 2 of his enforcers held her arms. "I gave you a choice. Forget what you found. Accept the bond. Become my Luna, and live a comfortable life. But you had to be righteous. You had to threaten to tell the council." She'd found the ledger 4 days ago, hidden in a false panel behind the Alpha's private study. Names, dates, prices. Dozens of Omegas from the Ashfall pack listed as deceased or transferred. But the numbers beside their names told a different story. They hadn't died. They hadn't transferred. They'd been sold. Omega trafficking. Generations of it. Families told their daughters had succumbed to fever or fled in the night, when really they'd been drugged, bound, and shipped to the highest bidder across the border. When Cyrilith confronted Drystan, demanding he expose his own father's crimes before she would complete their mating bond, he'd smiled. That same charming smile he'd used when he first courted her. "You're very brave," he'd said, "and very stupid." The next morning, he'd suggested a walk through the thornwood to clear the air. She'd believed him because she'd wanted to believe him, because her wolf had already begun bonding to his, and severing that connection felt like carving out her own heart. Fool. Now she lay in the mud, watching her breath form small clouds that vanished into nothing. The cold had stopped hurting 20 minutes ago. She knew what that meant. Her body was surrendering. No one would find her here. The thornwood was forbidden territory, too close to the border, too filled with rogues and worse. Drystan had planned it perfectly. When she didn't return, he'd organize search parties in the wrong direction. He'd wear grief like a mask. He'd tell the pack she must have wandered off during her heat, confused and frightened, and been taken by ferals. Her family would mourn. The mating ceremony would be cancelled. Drystan would wait a respectable period, then choose another Omega. Someone who didn't ask questions. Someone who would look the other way while he continued his father's legacy. And the Omegas in those ledgers, the ones still alive somewhere, suffering, would never be found. Cyrilith closed her eyes. She'd tried to do the right thing. It had killed her. A branch snapped somewhere in the darkness. Her eyes flew open. Footsteps. Heavy. Deliberate. Moving through the undergrowth with the confidence of something that owned this forest. Not a rescue party. Ashfall wolves would have called out, used her name. This was something else. Cyrilith tried to drag herself toward a fallen log, somewhere to hide, but her body refused. Her legs screamed, her vision blurred with pain. The footsteps stopped. She felt him before she saw him, a presence so powerful it pressed against her skin like a physical weight. Alpha. But not Drystan. This was something older, stronger. The kind of dominance that didn't need to announce itself because every wolf within miles already knew it was there. A shadow emerged from the tree line. Cyrilith forced her head to turn, agony lancing through her neck. Through the haze of pain and blood loss, she saw a man step into the moonlight. Tall, broad, dark hair that fell past his jaw, eyes that caught the silver light and held it, pale gold, almost luminous. He moved toward her with the fluid grace of a predator, then stopped 3 feet away, studying her like she was a puzzle he hadn't expected to find. "Please," she whispered. Her voice cracked. "I can't stand." The Alpha King of the Valdrin pack tilted his head. Then he knelt beside her in the mud, and the thornwood held its breath. Calum Voss had seen death before. He'd caused enough of it to recognize when someone stood at the threshold. This Omega was close. Her scent was wrong, sharp with rejection trauma, layered with blood, and the bitter edge of a bond torn incomplete. Her leg was shattered. At least 3 ribs broken, possibly more. A gash along her temple had clotted, but the blood loss had already done its damage. Her eyes, though, green as spring moss and still fighting, still aware. "Who did this to you?" His voice came out rougher than intended. "Doesn't matter." Her words slurred, hypothermia setting in. "You should go. They'll come back. Check if I'm dead." "Who will come back?" She laughed, a broken, wet sound. "Ashfall, my pack. Former pack." Her eyes drifted closed. "Rejected me. Left me here to rot." Ashfall. Calum's jaw tightened. The Kell family had been thorns in Valdrin's side for 3 generations. Political rivals, economic saboteurs, and something worse. Something he'd never been able to prove. "You're the Omega betrothed to Drystan Kell." Her eyes opened. Fear flickered there, followed by resignation. "Was. Before I became inconvenient." "Inconvenient how?" "Found something. Something they've been hiding." Her breath rattled. "Doesn't matter now. No one will believe a rejected Omega over an Alpha heir." She was fading. Calum could hear her heartbeat slowing, each pump weaker than the last. He should leave her. She was Ashfall territory, or had been. Getting involved meant political complications, potential accusations of interference, exactly the kind of leverage the Kells would exploit. But something in those green eyes stopped him. Something that reminded him of another Omega years ago. One he hadn't been able to save. "Can you shift?" "No, tried. My wolf is..." She swallowed. "She's retreating." The rejection broke something. Calum removed his coat and wrapped it around her, then lifted her with careful precision. She gasped as pain flared through her injuries. "Your leg is shattered," he said, adjusting his grip to minimize the pressure. "Possibly internal bleeding. How long have you been here?" "Don't know. Hours. Since morning." "It's nearly midnight." 12 hours. Alone. Broken. Waiting to die. He carried her toward the edge of the thornwood where his patrol waited. His second-in-command, Brennick, emerged from the shadows, eyes widening at the bundle in Calum's arms. "My king? Send word to the healers, priority 1, and send a message to no one else, especially not Ashfall." "Who is she?" Calum looked down at the Omega, unconscious now, her face pale as bone against his dark coat. "That's what I intend to find out." He carried her into the night, away from the territory that had tried to kill her, and Serelith Varen didn't know yet that she'd just been claimed by Ashfall's greatest enemy. Whether that made her fortunate or doomed remained to be seen. Serelith woke to firelight and the smell of herbs she didn't recognize. The ceiling above her was stone, gray and ancient, carved with symbols that hummed faintly with old magic. Her body ached, but the sharp edges of pain had been dulled. Someone had splinted her leg, bound her ribs, and cleaned the wound on her temple. Someone had saved her. "You've been unconscious for 3 days." Serelith turned her head carefully toward the voice. The Alpha sat in a chair beside the window, watching her with those unnerving golden eyes. In the firelight, his features were sharp, high cheekbones, a jaw that could have been carved from granite, a mouth that looked like it had forgotten how to smile. He wore no crown, no insignia, just black leather and the weight of command. "Where am I?" Her voice came out as a rasp. "Valdrin Keep, my territory." He stood crossing to a table where a pitcher of water waited. He poured a glass and brought it to her, helping her sit up enough to drink. "The healers say you're fortunate. Another hour in that forest and we'd be having a very different conversation. Thank you." The words felt inadequate. "You saved my life." "Yes. Now you're going to tell me why I had to." Serelith studied him over the rim of the glass. The Alpha King of Valdrin. the most powerful wolf in the Northern Territories, the man every Ashfall child was taught to fear. He didn't look like a monster. He looked like a man who was very tired and very dangerous. Why does it matter to you? Because I found you half dead in contested territory, rejected and discarded. Because Drystan Kell doesn't make careless decisions, which means you're either a threat or a liability. His gaze sharpened. Which are you? She could lie. She should lie. Self-preservation demanded it. But what was the point? Drystan already believed she was dead. If this alpha wanted her eliminated, she'd never see the blow coming anyway. I found records, she said, her voice low. Proof that the Kell family has been trafficking omegas for generations, selling them across the border to collectors, breeders, slavers, dozens of wolves, maybe hundreds. Her hands trembled around the glass. When I confronted Drystan, told him I'd bring it to the council if he didn't stop it, he decided I was a problem that needed to disappear. A muscle twitched in the Alpha King's jaw. His expression hardened into something cold and sharp and deeply personal. Omega trafficking, he repeated. I saw the ledger. Names, dates, prices. Omegas listed as dead who were actually sold. Families lied to for years. Sarilith met his eyes. But I don't have proof anymore. Drystan has the ledger. It's my word against an Alpha heir's. No one will believe me. Calum Voss was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was different, harder, with an edge that made her wolf shiver despite its weakened state. You said the trafficking has been happening for generations. According to the records, at least 30 years, maybe longer. 30 years. He turned toward the fire, his back to her, shoulders rigid. Tell me, did you see a name? Lysara Voss. She would have been taken 31 years ago. Sarilith's breath caught. I don't remember every name, but... Voss? Is she... My mother. The words were measured. Absolute. And I've been searching for proof of what happened to her for 15 years. He turned back to face her, and in his golden eyes she saw something that looked like the first spark of a wildfire. It seems we have a common enemy, Omega. Sarilith let the weight of his words settle over her. His mother, trafficked, 31 years of not knowing whether she was alive or dead, sold or slaughtered. 31 years of searching for proof that the Kells had destroyed his family, and she had stumbled into the one piece of evidence that could give him answers. I'm sorry, she said, her voice soft. About your mother. Don't be sorry. Be useful. Calum turned from the fire, his expression unreadable. You saw the ledger. You remember details. Names, dates, buyers. That information is in your head, even if Drystan has the physical evidence. Some of it, not everything. Enough to build a case. Enough to bring before the High Council and demand an investigation. Sarilith shook her head slowly. You don't understand. I'm a rejected Omega with no pack, no standing, and no credibility. Drystan will say I'm lying out of spite. His father will produce witnesses swearing I was mentally unstable, that the rejection drove me mad. They'll destroy me before I ever reach the council chambers. Not if you have protection they can't penetrate. She stared at him. What kind of protection? Calum crossed the room until he stood at the foot of her bed, arms folded, radiating the kind of authority that made her wolf want to bare its throat despite everything. Mate me. The words hit her like a physical blow. You've lost your mind. My mind is perfectly intact. This is calculated. His golden eyes held hers without flinching. You mate me. You become the Luna of Valdrin, the Alpha Queen of the most powerful pack in the Northern Territories. Untouchable by Ashfall politics, beyond Drystan's reach. We've known each other 3 days. And in those 3 days, I've learned more about your character than I've learned about most wolves in years. He began to pace, his movements controlled, predatory. You have no pack who will shelter you. If you try to return to your family, the Kells will find a way to finish what they started. If you try to disappear, you'll spend your life running, and the omegas in those ledgers will never be found. But as my mate, he continued, you're protected by every law, every treaty, every alliance I've built over 15 years. You help me reconstruct what you saw, testify before the council, and we destroy the Kells together. Serelith's heart was pounding. This isn't how mating works. There's supposed to be courtship, connection, something real. Real is overrated. Real got you thrown into the thornwood. He stopped pacing, facing her directly. I'm offering you survival, purpose, and justice. That's more than most matings provide. You feel nothing for me. Correct. And you feel nothing for me. This arrangement requires trust and commitment, not feelings. He tilted his head. Unless you'd prefer I pay for your healing and send you on your way. But know this. Drystan believes you're dead. The moment you surface anywhere, that changes. He'll come for you, and next time, I won't be there to find you in the dark. The fire crackled in the silence. Serelith thought of Dristan's face as he watched his enforcers drag her into the thornwood, the cold calculation in his eyes, the absolute certainty that she would die alone and forgotten. She thought of the names in that ledger, the Omegas who'd been stolen from their families, sold like livestock, erased from existence while their loved ones grieved empty graves. And she thought of this Alpha King standing before her, offering a devil's bargain wrapped in protection and purpose. If I do this, she said slowly, I want your word that we pursue justice for every Omega in those records. Not just your mother. All of them. The ones still alive need to be found. The ones who died deserve to have their names spoken. Recognition crossed Calem's face. Surprise, perhaps, or respect. Agreed. Justice for all of them. What else? If I ever become a danger to your pack, if this arrangement threatens Valdrin's safety, you release me from the bond. No hesitation. No guilt. That scenario won't arise. Swear it anyway. He studied her for a long moment. Then he extended his hand. I swear it. Are we agreed? Serelith looked at his hand. Strong, scarred across the knuckles, belonging to a man who'd just offered to make her a queen so they could burn their enemies together. She'd been left in the thornwood to die. Now she was being offered a chance to rise. Serelith took his hand. We're agreed. His grip was firm, warm. His thumb brushed across her knuckles once, a gesture so brief she might have imagined it. Then rest, Omega. When you're strong enough to walk, I'll show you Valdrin. We have a war to plan. He released her hand and moved toward the door. Your Majesty, she called after him. He paused, glancing back. Why were you in the Thornwood that night? It's contested territory. Dangerous, even for you. For a moment, his composure cracked. Something almost vulnerable surfaced beneath the controlled mask. I go there every month, he said, his voice rough. It's where my mother was last seen. I've never stopped looking for traces of her. The door closed behind him, and Serelith was alone with the fire and the magnitude of what she'd just agreed to. She'd been discarded in the dark by a man who'd pretended to want her. Now she'd bound herself to a man who'd never pretended anything at all. One of those dangers, she realized, was far more honest than the other. 5 days later, Serelith stood at the window of her new chambers, watching Valdrin Keep sprawl beneath her. She'd expected something grand. She hadn't expected a fortress carved into the mountain itself. Gray stone towers rose from the rock like teeth, connected by covered bridges that swayed gently in the wind. Below, the Pack village spread across the valley. Hundreds of cottages, training grounds, a market square bustling with wolves in both human and shifted form. Everything about it spoke of age, power, and absolute dominion. It's overwhelming at first. Serelith turned. A woman stood in the doorway. Tall, silver-haired, with the kind of posture that suggested she'd been giving orders since before Serelith was born. I'm Marin, the woman said, stepping inside. The king's aunt. He's asked me to help you prepare. Prepare for what exactly? For being Luna. Marin's sharp blue eyes swept over Sarilith, assessing everything. You'll need to learn our protocols, our alliances, our enemies. You'll need to understand pack politics, formal ceremonies, and how to command a room full of alphas without flinching. And how long do I have to learn all this? The mating ceremony is in 3 weeks. Your first public appearance at the Territorial Summit follows 1 week after that. Marin's expression softened slightly. It's not enough time, but you'll manage. The king doesn't make careless choices. The next 3 weeks blurred into exhaustion. Sarilith learned which families held power in Valdrin and which were climbing for it. She memorized treaties, trade agreements, and blood feuds stretching back centuries. She practiced formal diplomacy until her tongue ached. Marin was relentless, correcting her posture, her word choices, the way she held her hands. But beneath the severity was something almost maternal. "You're stronger than you think," Marin said one evening. "I see it. The king sees it. Now you need to see it too." "I was rejected," Sarilith murmured. "Left for dead. My wolf barely speaks to me anymore." "Your wolf is healing. So are you." Marin placed a hand on her shoulder. "What happened to you was cruelty. What you do next is choice. Choose to be more than what they made you." The mating ceremony was held at moonrise on the winter solstice. It was nothing like the elaborate ritual Drystan had planned. No crowds, no political theater. Just Sarilith, Calum, and a circle of his most trusted wolves beneath the open sky. The bond, when it formed, was not the violent snap she'd experienced with Drystan's incomplete claim. It was something deeper, a slow warmth spreading through her chest, settling into her bones, connecting her to the alpha beside her in ways she didn't fully understand. When it was done, Calum turned to face her. His golden eyes held hers. "Your pack now," he said, his voice low. "Whatever comes, you're not alone anymore." For the first time since the Thornwood, Sarilith felt her wolf stir. Not retreating, not hiding, rising. The weeks following the ceremony were a careful dance. Calum gave her space, separate chambers, separate routines. They met each evening in his study to coordinate strategy, mapping what she remembered of the ledger, identifying potential witnesses, building a case piece by piece. He was meticulous, cold almost. Every conversation focused on evidence, timelines, political maneuvering. He never asked about her past or her dreams. He never touched her beyond necessity. And yet, sometimes she caught him watching her when he thought she wasn't looking. Sometimes his hand lingered when passing her documents. Sometimes, late at night, she felt the bond pulse with something that wasn't strategy. It was Maren who finally pushed her. "He's afraid of you," the older woman said one afternoon, watching Sarilith practice her formal introductions. "The Alpha King? Afraid of me?" "Terrified." Marin smiled. He spent 15 years building walls, controlling everything, letting no one close enough to hurt him. And then you arrived. Broken, bleeding, and somehow still fighting. You're everything he doesn't know how to handle. I don't understand. You will. That night, Sarilith found Calum in the Keep's library, surrounded by old maps and older grief. "You should be sleeping," he said, without looking up. "So should you." She moved closer, studying the documents spread across his desk. "What are you looking for?" "Border Patrol records from 31 years ago. I've read them 100 times. I keep hoping I'll find something I missed." "You've been searching for your mother your whole life." "Half of it." He finally looked up, and she saw the exhaustion carved into his features. "She was taken when I was 7. I remember her voice, her scent, the way she hummed when she thought no one was listening. Everything else has faded. I'm sorry." "Everyone's sorry. Sorry doesn't bring her back." He stood, moving to the window, his reflection ghostly in the dark glass. "I became Alpha King at 22 because my father died of grief. A broken bond. He couldn't survive losing her, so he just stopped living. Serelith crossed the room until she stood beside him. That's why you won't let anyone close. You're afraid of what losing them would do to you. He was silent for a long moment. I've never had someone read me so easily. It's unsettling. I was mated to a man who hid everything. I learned to see what people don't say. She hesitated, then placed her hand on his arm. Calum. We're bound now. Whatever walls you've built, I'm already on the other side of them. He looked down at her hand, then at her face. You're not what I expected, he admitted. Neither are you. She held his gaze. I thought you'd be cold, calculating, using me like a weapon and nothing more. I am using you like a weapon. Yes. But you're also making sure I eat, checking that I sleep, growling at anyone who speaks to me with less than complete respect. She allowed herself a faint smile. That's not strategy. That's something else. The bond between them hummed, warm, insistent, demanding acknowledgement. Calum's hand rose slowly, giving her time to pull away. His fingers brushed her jaw. I don't know how to do this, he admitted. Connection, vulnerability. I've spent so long alone. Then we learn together. For a moment they stood there, the distance between them measured in heartbeats. Then footsteps echoed in the corridor and they stepped apart as Brennick appeared in the doorway, his face grim. My king. We've received word from the border. Calum's expression hardened instantly. What word? Ashfall is mobilizing. Dryston Kell has announced his engagement to a new Omega. Brennick's eyes flicked to Serelith. And he's demanding the return of his stolen betrothed. He claims Valdrin kidnapped you. The warmth of the moment shattered. Calum's voice was ice. He's making his move. Serelith felt her wolf surge, not with fear, but with fury. Then let him come, she said. I'm not hiding anymore. The summit was held at neutral ground, the ancient meeting hall at Ravens Hollow, where pack disputes had been settled for centuries. 12 Alpha representatives gathered around the stone table. Serelith stood at Calum's side, wearing deep emerald silk, Valdrin's royal color. Diamonds glittered at her throat. Calum's mother's. You wear them better than any vault ever could, he'd told her that morning. Now she needed to prove she deserved them. The Kells weren't present. This was merely a territorial council, but their influence poisoned the air. Serelith could see it in the sideways glances, the whispered conversations that stopped when she approached. The kidnapped Omega, the rejected bride, the woman who'd somehow become Luna of Valdrin. Lord Harkin of the Stonecrest Pack spoke first, his voice dripping with false concern. We've all heard the allegations from Ashfall, that the new Luna of Valdrin was taken against her will, that this mating is a political maneuver designed to— I was not taken. Serelith's voice rang clear across the chamber. Every head turned. She felt Calum's subtle shift beside her, not stepping in, not speaking for her, letting her claim her own ground. I was left for dead in the Thornwood by my former betrothed after I discovered crimes his family has been committing for decades. She met Lord Harkin's eyes without flinching. The Alpha King found me. He saved my life. I chose to mate him. There was no kidnapping. There was survival. Bold claims, Lady Vestra of the Iron Ridge Pack murmured. Do you have proof of these supposed crimes? I have my testimony. I have my memory of records I saw with my own eyes. And I have the scars from being thrown from a moving carriage and left to freeze. Serelith lifted her chin. Would you like to see them? Silence. Lord Brennan of the Coast Watch Pack leaned forward. The Kells have been respected members of this council for generations. You're asking us to believe. I'm asking you to investigate. Serelith kept her voice steady. Dozens of Omegas have disappeared from Ashfall territory over the past 30 years. Families were told they died of illness or fled as rogues. But what if they didn't? What if they were sold? The word hung in the air like smoke. Omega trafficking is a serious accusation, Lord Harkin said slowly. It's a serious crime, one that deserves serious scrutiny. Serelith looked around the table. How many of you have Omegas in your packs who came from Ashfall? How many of those Omegas have stories that don't quite add up? I'm not asking you to condemn anyone today. I'm asking you to look closer. Lady Vestra was watching her with new interest. You speak well for a rejected Omega. I speak the truth. Rejection doesn't change what I saw. Calum finally spoke, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. My mate has requested nothing unreasonable: an investigation into Ashfall's Omega records, verification of deaths and transfers. If the Kells are innocent, they have nothing to fear. Lord Harkin's jaw tightened. And if we refuse? Then I'll conduct my own investigation, with or without this council's blessing. Calum's golden eyes swept the room. But I suspect you'd prefer to be part of the solution rather than remembered as those who looked away. The vote passed. Narrowly. 7-5. As they left Raven's Hollow, Brennick fell into step beside them. That was well played, my Luna. You've made allies today. I was rejected, Serelith replied. The enemies were already there. Calum's hand found the small of her back. You simply forced them into the light. That night, alone in her chambers, Serelith allowed herself to feel the magnitude of what she'd done. She'd stood before the most powerful wolves in the territories and demanded justice, and they had listened. Her wolf stirred, stronger now, more present than it had been since the Thornwood. We're not prey anymore, it whispered. No, Serelith agreed, we're not. The response came faster than anyone expected. 3 days after the summit, a formal delegation arrived at Valdrin's borders. Not soldiers, diplomats, carrying an invitation sealed with the Kell family crest. Lord Protector Theron Kell requests the honor of your presence at the Ashfall Solstice celebration. Brennick read aloud, a gesture of goodwill to address recent misunderstandings. Calum's expression was stone. It's a trap. Obviously. Marin stood by the window. But refusing looks like fear. We have nothing to hide, they do. Then prove it. Serelith's voice was firm. Accept the invitation, walk into their territory, show them I'm not afraid to face them. Calum turned to her. You understand what you're suggesting? You'd be in Drystan's home, surrounded by his wolves. If something goes wrong, then I die, knowing I didn't hide. She met his eyes. I spent months being the perfect obedient Omega Drystan wanted. I let him control every moment of my life because I thought that was love. I won't live like that again. Not even for safety. This isn't about control. This is about protecting you. No. This is about finishing what we started. She crossed to him, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his skin. You've been hunting the Kells for 15 years. I've been running from them for weeks. Neither approach has worked. Maybe it's time to stop hunting and running. Maybe it's time to confront. The bond between them pulsed. Her determination bleeding into his caution, his fear bleeding into her resolve. If we do this, he said slowly, you stay beside me. Every moment. You don't go anywhere alone. You don't eat or drink anything I haven't verified. And if I say we leave, we leave. No arguments. Agreed. And one more thing. His hand rose to cup her jaw, tilting her face up to his. Whatever happens in that den of wolves, remember who you belong to now. Not as property. As partner. As pack. I know who I am. Good. Because they're going to try to break you. Make you doubt. Make you feel like that rejected Omega bleeding in the Thornwood. His thumb brushed her cheek. Don't let them. I won't. He held her gaze for a long moment. Then, slowly, he lowered his head and pressed his lips to her forehead. A gesture so tender it made her chest ache. Then we accept the invitation. He murmured against her skin. And we walk into the wolves' den together. That night, Serelith dreamed of the Thornwood. But this time, when the darkness came, she didn't face it alone. Calum was beside her, golden eyes gleaming, and her wolf was no longer hiding. It was ready to hunt. Ashfall Keep rose from the valley like a monument to cruelty. Where Valdren was carved from mountain stone, ancient and enduring, Ashfall was all sharp angles and polished obsidian, beautiful in the way a blade was beautiful. Designed to intimidate, to remind visitors exactly who held power here. Sarilith had grown up in this valley. She'd walked these halls as a child, played in these gardens, dreamed of one day being its Luna. Now she returned as something else entirely. Breathe, Caleb murmured as their carriage passed through the main gates. Don't let them see your fear. I'm not afraid. She was surprised to find it was true. I'm angry. Good. Anger is useful. Fear makes mistakes. The courtyard was filled with wolves, all watching, all assessing. Sarilith recognized faces from her former life, servants who'd attended her, guards who'd escorted her, Omegas she'd called friends. None of them met her eyes. Lord Protector Theron Kell waited at the entrance stairs, his son beside him. Dristan looked exactly as she remembered. Golden-haired, handsome, wearing charm like expensive cologne. But now she could see what lay beneath. The calculation, the cruelty, the entitlement. Alpha King Voss. Theron's voice boomed across the courtyard. Welcome to Ashfall. We're honored by your presence. The honor is ours. Calem's response was perfectly diplomatic, perfectly cold. Your invitation was unexpected. These are unexpected times. Theron's gaze slid to Sarilith. And this must be your new Luna. I believe we've met before, though under different circumstances. Lord Protector? Sarilith curtsied exactly as Marin had taught her, respectful but not subservient. Thank you for your hospitality. Of course, you were nearly family after all. Theron smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Before your unfortunate confusion. I wasn't confused. I was disposed of. She kept her voice pleasant. But I survived. Funny how that works out. A ripple went through the watching crowd. Beside his father, Drystan's jaw tightened. Perhaps we should continue this conversation inside, Caleb said smoothly, away from curious ears. The celebration that evening was political theater. 300 wolves filled Ashfall's great hall, all watching the new Luna of Valdren. Sarilith smiled, made conversation, complimented gowns and achievements with practiced grace. And all the while, she felt Dristan watching her. He cornered her near the refreshment table, appearing suddenly at her elbow. You look well, he said, voice low. Better than I expected. You expected me dead. I expected you to see reason. He smiled, but his eyes were ice. You could have had everything. Luna of Ashfall, wealth, status. All you had to do was keep quiet. About the Omegas you've been selling? The families you've been lying to for decades? She kept her voice low, expression pleasant. No, some prices are too high. And now you're mated to my family's greatest enemy. His lip curled. Was that your plan? Seduce your way into power? My plan was to survive. Everything else was adaptation. You think you've won. You haven't. He leaned closer. The council investigation will find nothing. Records cleaned. Witnesses silenced. By the time this is over, you'll be exactly what I said. A mentally unstable Omega making wild accusations. We'll see. Yes, we will. His hand brushed her arm possessively. Enjoy the party, Sarilith. It may be your last as Luna. He walked away before she could respond. Caleb appeared at her side moments later, expression controlled but eyes blazing. What did he say? That they've cleaned the records, silenced witnesses. Sarilith steadied her breath. He thinks he's won. He's wrong. How do you know? Because he's panicking. Caleb guided her toward a quieter corner. Confident men don't threaten. They don't corner enemies at parties. He's scared, which means we're closer than he wants us to be. We need proof. Without the ledger, we may have something better. His voice dropped. Brennick received word an hour ago. One of our contacts in Ashfall has agreed to testify. a former guard who helped transport the Omegas. He has names, roots, buyers. Hope flickered in Serelith's chest. Why would he come forward now? Because his daughter just presented as Omega. He can't stomach the thought of her suffering the same fate. Calem's hand found hers. Tomorrow, we return to Valdren. Then we bring our evidence to the High Council. What if they try to stop us tonight? They won't. Too many witnesses. His grip tightened. But stay close anyway. They danced once that evening. A political necessity. Appearances to maintain. But as Calem held her, his hand warm against her back, Serelith felt something shift between them. This wasn't strategy anymore. This was something far more dangerous. And from across the hall, watching with barely concealed rage, Dristan Kell saw it too. The High Council chamber was carved from white stone. 13 Alpha representatives sat in a semicircle around the central floor. Serelith stood beside Calem, facing them all. Across the chamber the Kell family had assembled, Theron in ceremonial robes, Dristan in polished armor, Lady Kell, silent and watchful. We are here to address serious allegations, High Alpha Mordecai intoned, his voice echoing off the vaulted ceiling. The Luna of Valdren claims evidence of systematic Omega trafficking by the Ashfall Pack. The Kells deny these charges and counterclaim that the Luna was taken from their territory against her will. His ancient eyes swept between them. We will hear both sides, we will see the evidence, and we will render judgment. Theron spoke first, his voice dripping with wounded dignity. These accusations are nothing but revenge. The woman you call Luna was my son's betrothed. She became unstable before the mating ceremony, paranoid, delusional. When she fled into the Thornwood alone, we searched for days. We grieved her loss. He gestured at Serelith. And now she reappears, mated to our political rival, making wild claims without proof. I submit that this is manipulation, not justice. I have proof, Serelith said, her voice steady. Every head turned. You have nothing, Dristan snapped. The ledger you claim to have seen doesn't exist. You're lying to destroy my family because I rejected you. You didn't reject me. You tried to murder me. Serelith stepped forward. And you're right. I don't have the ledger. You destroyed it. But I have something better. She nodded to Brennick, who opened the chamber doors. A man walked in, middle-aged, scarred, wearing the worn clothing of a former soldier. This is Corvus Thane, Serelith announced, former captain of Ashfall's border guard. For 12 years he helped transport Omegas from Ashfall territory to buyers across the border. He's prepared to testify. The chamber erupted. This is outrageous! Theron roared. Silence! High Alpha Mordecai slammed his staff against the stone floor. The witness will speak. Corvus Thane's voice was rough but steady. I served the Kell family for 20 years. I believed I was protecting my pack. But what they asked me to do... He swallowed. I helped move 37 Omegas across the border between my 8th and 20th year of service. I was told they were criminals, rogues, threats to pack security. But they weren't. They were daughters, sisters, mothers. His voice cracked. Drugged and bound and handed to buyers who paid in gold, and I helped, because I was told it was necessary. Lies. Dristan stepped forward. This man is being paid. I'm being paid nothing. Corvus faced him directly. I'm here because my daughter presented as Omega last month. When I looked at her, I saw every girl I helped destroy. His eyes glistened. I won't let my silence condemn anyone else. Do you have documentation? High Alpha Mordecai asked. I have records I kept. Names of Omegas, dates of transport, descriptions of buyers. Corvus handed a leather folder to the nearest council member. Routes marked on maps, payment amounts, everything I could remember. Lady Vestra opened the folder. Her face went pale. These are detailed. I knew someday I'd need to atone. Serelith pressed forward. I also have testimony from Lady Gwendolyn Marsh, whose sister supposedly died of fever 15 years ago. No physician ever attended her. Lord Aldrich Stone's daughter, listed as fled rogue, left behind all possessions including her mother's wedding ring. These aren't runaways. These are victims. Circumstantial, Theron insisted, but his voice had lost its certainty. Coincidences twisted to... There's one more thing. Caleb's voice cut through the chaos. He stepped forward, pulling a sealed document from his coat. 3 days ago, acting on information from Corvus Thane, my wolves located a holding facility across the northern border. A place where Omegas were kept before being sold. His jaw tightened. We found 7 wolves still alive, imprisoned for years. The chamber went silent. One of them, Caleb continued, his voice barely controlled, is named Lysara Voss, taken from the Thornwood 31 years ago. She is my mother. Gasps echoed off the stone walls. She's alive, traumatized, barely able to speak, but alive. Caleb's golden eyes fixed on Theron Kell. She remembers the man who sold her. Your father's face when he handed her to the slavers. Theron's composure cracked. This is fabricated. She has the brand. Caleb's voice was ice. The Kell family crest burned into her shoulder. Merchandise. Lady Kell made a small sound. No, she whispered. Theron, you promised the old ways were over. Be quiet, Theron snapped, but the damage was done. High Alpha Mordecai rose to his feet. Lord Protector Theron Kell, Alpha Heir Drystan Kell, you stand accused of Omega trafficking, attempted murder, and conspiracy spanning 3 generations. His voice was thunder. This council orders your immediate arrest pending full trial. Your assets are frozen. Your pack is placed under supervision. Guards moved forward. Drystan's eyes found Serelith, wild, desperate, filled with hatred. You think you've won? He snarled as guards seized him. You're nothing. A rejected Omega playing at power. I'm the Luna of Valdrin, Serelith said calmly. I'm the woman who survived you, and I'm the reason your empire fell. She turned her back on him as they dragged him away. Caleb's hand found hers. It's over, he said softly. No. She squeezed his fingers. For them, it's over. For the survivors, it's just beginning. She looked up at him, and in his golden eyes she saw something she hadn't expected. Not triumph. Pride. In her. That night they stood on the balcony of Valdrin Keep, watching the moon rise. The celebrations had ended hours ago. The pack had feasted, toasted their Luna, howled victory into the sky. But eventually the crowds dispersed, and Serelith found herself alone with the Alpha King she'd married for survival. Your mother, she said, breaking the silence. How is she? Recovering. Slowly. Caleb's voice was rough. The healers say it will take time. Years, maybe, but she's home. She's safe. I'm glad. So am I. He turned to face her. I spent 15 years preparing to avenge her death. I never allowed myself to hope she might be alive. And now you have to learn how to live with hope instead of rage. Yes. His hand rose, brushing a strand of hair from her face. You understand that better than anyone, don't you? I understand surviving when you expected to die. I understand having to rebuild everything you thought you knew. She leaned into his touch. I understand finding something worth living for when you'd given up. Serelith. Her name on his lips was almost reverent. When I found you in the Thornwood, I thought you were a weapon, a tool for my revenge, a means to an end. I know. I was wrong. His forehead touched hers. You're not a weapon. You're not a tool. You're the reason I remember what it feels like to want something beyond destruction. And what do you want? You. The word was simple. Absolute. Not as Luna, not as ally, not as strategy. Just you. Whatever that means. However that looks. Tears pricked her eyes. I was rejected. Thrown away. I told myself I'd never trust anyone with that kind of power over me again. I know, but I trust you. She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. I don't know when it happened. Somewhere between the Thornwood and the council chamber. Somewhere between strategy and this. This? Love. The word felt terrifying and true. I love you, Calum. Not because you saved me, because you saw me, the real me, and you didn't look away. He kissed her then. Not gentle, not tentative, a claiming, a promise, a seal on everything they'd built from ashes and determination. When they finally broke apart, breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. I love you too, he said. I didn't plan to. I didn't want to. But here we are. Here we are. The moon rose higher, the mountains stood eternal, and two wolves who'd found each other in darkness finally stepped into light. Together. 1 year later. The Valdrin Sanctuary sprawled across what had once been an empty valley, its buildings warm with firelight and the sound of healing. Serelith walked through the main courtyard, watching Omegas who'd once been broken slowly learning to live again. Some had been recovered from trafficking networks. Others had fled abusive packs. All had found a home here. 47 residents, Marin reported, falling into step beside her. 3 more applications this week. We'll need to expand the East Wing. Already approved. His Majesty signed the funding yesterday. Marin smiled. He signs whatever you put in front of him these days. That's not true. It's a little true. The older woman squeezed her arm. You've changed him, you know. I've known Calum his entire life. I've never seen him smile the way he smiles at you. Serelith found her mate in the sanctuary's garden, speaking with a young Omega who'd arrived days ago. The girl couldn't have been more than 17, thin, frightened, and flinching at sudden movements. But as Serelith watched, Calum knelt to meet her eyes. His voice was low, gentle, his posture open, the girl's shoulders slowly relaxed. This was the man the territories called cold, calculating, ruthless. They didn't know him at all. Later, alone in their chambers, Calum pulled her close. There's news from the border, he said. Good or bad? Complicated. The last trafficking network has been dismantled. 17 more Omegas recovered. 3 buyers arrested. He paused. And a letter from the Ashfall Council requesting guidance on reforms. They're asking us for help? They're asking you. He smiled. You've become famous. The Luna who exposed corruption. The Omega who refused to stay silent. Packs across the territories are using your story to push for change. I didn't do it for fame. I know. That's why it matters. She rested her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. Sometimes I still dream about the Thornwood, she admitted. The cold. The certainty I was going to die. And now? Now I wake up. And you're there. And I remember that I'm not that Omega anymore. No. You're not. His arms tightened around her. You're a Luna. A survivor. A force that changed everything. I had help. We had each other. Through the window, snow had begun to fall, soft flakes drifting past the glass like memories of another night. Serelith watched them settle. Do you believe in fate? She asked. Calum was silent for a moment. I believe in choices, he said. I chose to search the Thornwood. I chose to stop when I heard your heartbeat. I chose to save you, mate you, fight beside you. His lips brushed her temple. Every moment since has been a choice, and I'd make every one again. Even the hard ones? Especially those. He tilted her chin up, golden eyes meeting green. You were left in the dark to die, Serelith. But you didn't die. You rose. You fought. You became something no one expected. So did you. Only because of you. She kissed him softly, pouring everything into the connection, gratitude and love and the fierce joy of finding home. When they parted, she smiled. Tell me something. Anything. If you could go back to that night in the Thornwood, knowing everything that would come after, the danger, the pain, the war, would you still stop? Caleb's answer was immediate. I'd stop sooner, search harder, find you faster. His voice dropped to a whisper. Every moment before you is just waiting. Everything after is living. The snow continued falling. Two wolves stood at a window wrapped in each other, watching winter transform the world. She'd been rejected, abandoned, left to die. But he'd found her anyway, and together, they'd built something neither had dared to dream, a love forged in darkness, tested by fire, and strong enough to light the way for every lost soul who followed. This was their legacy. This was their beginning. Thank you for staying until the very end. If this story touched something in you, the fight for justice, the power of being chosen, the strength it takes to survive, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment telling us your favorite moment and where you're listening from. Subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the next chapter. You're the reason these stories exist. Thank you for being here, for listening, for believing that even in the darkest moments, love can find a way.